Hello everyone. You may notice it's a little bit different surrounding today. I'm in the bathroom rather than in my studio. And that's partly because when I went traveling last, I bought some yarn from a thrift store. And typically I would have just brought it up to my studio and solved it from there, but Mom was responsible for bringing it home and she just brought all the laundry, including the yarn, down to the bathroom to get washed. And I wasn't going to argue with her about that, so we're filming it here. So I ended up buying a lot of yarn from a thrift store, which was not where I was expecting to buy yarn. So today is going to partly be a haul where I show you what I got. And part of it is also going to be showing you how I would take care of rolling the yarn so that way it can get washed safely in the washing machine without getting all tangled, you know. And just so you guys are at ease, I am not sitting on the toilet right now because the camera is sitting on the toilet. So in reality, you guys are on the toilet. and with that, we're just going to get started, all right? This was the first thing that I got. This cost me like $8. It's all the same type of yarn. How do I open this? It's not there. I feel like there should be, I was looking for something. So, there's this type of yarn. Oh, look. It's kind of like it's held together by this string. Can you see it? It's like this red string holding the project together along with the extra balls of yarn. It doesn't feel the nicest, although there's a lot of natural fibers. Yeah, it's wool and silk. I'm not crazy about the texture of wool, but I do love the feel of silk. And there's a lady's unfinished product on here. I'm assuming it's a lady. I don't know whether it was actually a lady or not. And you know, before this I was thinking like, who would buy some lady's unfinished project? And it turns out it's me. I would do that. I mean, although $8 was a really good deal for this, like if this was new at a store, I'd easily be paying like at least $10 a skein for one of these. I have no idea what this lady was making though, so let me cut this thread. I have scissors down here. Okay. We're gonna find out what it was that she was attempting to make. I'm probably not going to keep the project because frogging it and starting anew will be easier than trying to continue whatever it was that she was trying to finish. But it looks like part of a sweater. Oh, this was a sleeve. It's a finished sleeve. It's short on, about the right length for me actually. So I guess she was making a sweater, but I don't really want to guess what size the sweater should have been and making sure that I got like the right thing. It actually looks like the person used a different yarn to rib the cuff than they did to make the body of the sleeve. And the yarn that was provided was only for the body of the sleeve, so I'm not going to go on a hunt to figure out what this is, especially since this is kind of itchy. It does look pretty cool though. So we're gonna, that was one. That was $8. Then we also have these two skeins, which were like $2 each. And one came with a set of knitting needles in it. They were size 10s. And like, I love the colors on these, and they actually feel like relatively nice. I don't quite, it feels like synthetic material, honestly. Well, they feel like different materials. This feels more synthetic than this. They look very similar, the skeins look very similar, but I'm not sure if they're the same material. But obviously this is going to be for somebody small because I only got one skein. And almost never you go into a yarn, like you go into like a professional yarn store, you're never going to find a pair of knitting needles just like taped together with Scotch tape and just stuck into the skein. It's like, here you go, this is what you're going to use with this skein of yarn. Which honestly, if I were choosing the size needles to choose with this skein of yarn, I would have gone with a smaller circumference. I would have gone with like, well, most of the time I go between a size 6 to a size 8. I probably wouldn't have used a size 10. But hey, I'm not going to turn down new needles. I will take old needles. Most of my knitting collection is actually needles that people have gifted to me at this point. It's either needles that people have gifted to me or interchangeable needles that I tried to cobble together myself. And then we have this bag, which I think some lady just like took her stash and put it all in this bag, and they just slapped a $3 sticker on it. So, we're all right with that. You better believe that I put my hand inside and felt the different textures of yarn before I bought it, though, because there were like some skeins of yarn that I did not clear the thrift store out of yarn, because I felt some yarn is like, oh, I'm never going to use this. This feels way too rough. It was like cheap acrylic yarn. It wasn't worth it. I took all the yarn that was worth it. So we got this nice like rose color here from Softy, and it's like pretty nice. It's an acrylic yarn. It's wrapped in a skein. It still's got the original thing on it. Although, from the label that's on this thing, this was bought years and years ago. I've seen Softy's label now. It no longer looks like this. I don't know what year this is, though. I mean, it gives like the dye lot. I could look it up if I was interested, but... And then we got the most boring color in existence, but in a way that's kind of good, because I nearly used up my skein of the most boring color in existence, so I can hold off a little bit longer. But this also feels pretty soft. This actually feels very similar to the skein that I was just holding. And then we got this green. A little bit rougher, but it's a nice color. It's a nice color. This right here is exactly why I roll my yarn into balls before I use them. Because clearly someone tried to use the skein and then, or like it came loose somehow, and then they just wrapped it around like this. So it's going to be a little bit to untangle this one. Just a little bit, but I've all but earned the basketry merit badge from the Boy Scouts by teaching it to hundreds of kids. So I'm more than confident in my abilities to unravel this. And then we got this like really furry yarn. This could be mohair. Or cashmere or something. I don't know. This is expensive yarn, but it is going to feel like relatively itchy. There's also dirt in it, which this is going to have to get washed, but this is also one I'm going to have to really be careful about when I'm washing it. Because if you wash the yarn the wrong way, you ain't undoing that damage. And then this was the skein of yarn that made me excited to get this bag. Weird variegated yarn. Although, now that I'm looking at it, I'm wondering if it's like a different skein of yarn that's around, like a different color pattern, because I'm only seeing some of the colors and not all of them. Like I'm seeing like the black and the white and the blue, but I'm not seeing any of the red come through, and it looks like the red is a little bit more prevalent in the actual skein itself. But this is like a nice like sock yarn. I can do some really fun small projects with this, although it is a bit rough to be socks. just a bit. Then again, despite having Irish genes and despite having a grandfather who literally was a shepherd and a weaver, I'm not fond of wool. I much prefer cotton and acrylic. Oh, we have another skein of that yarn. So I got 2 skeins to work with. Then we got some more purple yarn, which this feels kind of soft. And this is how it's going to go. Like, it's going to be like soft and like, even though I don't really have a plan for the purple yarn, like purple is one of the colors I like more, so I have no problem of knowing that I'm going to use this at some point. And then we got this red yarn, which actually looks really similar. Oh, it's not the same, but it looks really similar to the red yarn that was holding the other project together. So a nice deep red. An awful tangled mess though. I'm gonna have to like untangle this apart. And then we got this last skein of purple yarn. And that was a $3 haul. And that was all the yarn I bought from the thrift store. I do have one more ball of yarn in here that I'm also going to have to wash, but I owned this before. I bought this to make my cousin's wedding blanket, and I bought like 2 pounds of it. And that's a lot of pink yarn. I do like pink, but maybe not 2 pounds worth. So that's all the yarn I'm going to have to wash. Now, I'm going to have to rearrange the camera real quick, just so I can show you how I'm going to wind it together, which means you guys get off the toilet. Woo. See you in a moment. Hello again. So you guys are no longer on the toilet, you are now in the trash can, which means you're trash. Not really, not really. So part of the blessings of disguise of being down in the bathroom instead of in my studio is that we are right next to our lovely drying rack that we use for like all the wet clothing, which means I have a place to hang all the yarn from. Which also means my feet are now free. This is pretty cool. So I'm only gonna unravel 1 ball of yarn in front of you guys. I'm not gonna unravel like the dozen that I have because that'd get boring to watch. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tie it like a loose knot here. Well, I should probably do a slip knot here so I can like easily undo it. I'm gonna turn this ball of yarn into a hank. So it's kind of like the opposite of turning a skein into a ball. I'm just gonna keep winding it around like this until it's all like this. And then after that, I'm gonna like save a little bit of the yarn, and I'm gonna use a different yarn for this. Maybe we'll keep with the pattern and use the red yarn, we'll see. But this way, after this, when the yarn goes into the machine, if we tie in 4 different things, they're going to be less likely to get tangled together, because anyone who has ever seen a washing machine work knows that when you use a washing machine, it agitates all the clothing. That's how it gets clean. It's going to tumble it over and over again. And if you do that to a bunch of string, it's likely to get knotted unless you secure it properly. So I'm using 2 bars that are like further away from each other. You can see there are like 2 bars in between. So that way they can be like relatively straight, but there's still enough distance and it's actually like long enough to make a hank. There you go. This is a bit tight though. I hope I don't bend the middle bars. This is never really a concern I've had before. But I have like 12 more balls of yarn to get better at this. There you go. Ooh. My arm could get tired while doing this, which could be bad news for tomorrow if they have me do that one particular job, which is just like boom, 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 boom with my arm. That's scanning barcodes, by the way. That's not something else. Yeah, that's getting really tight. But that is holding it at a better distance. Like, that is better at holding the distance than my legs would be. My legs would be getting slowly closer together. It's getting about halfway through the ball by now, I hope. There you go. This is probably giving a really good shot if you're looking at like the bathroom around. That this house has been lived in for a long time. We've been here for almost 20 years at this point. It'll be 20 years shortly after Halloween. And I actually used to have my studio downstairs. I didn't used to have it upstairs. But even though I resisted the move upstairs, it has ended up being a more functional studio upstairs. It's partly because we bought the house with a finished basement, and as we have lived here, the basement has become more and more unfinished. The lighting was not good down here. It was never good because the person who owned the house before us liked to experiment with the electrical wiring of the house and made it so that the made it so that the instead of having light switches in every room, there was like a pad and you clicked a certain number and it would light up the certain thing. And my mom had to fix it the upstairs like that because she's like, my mother's coming to live with us, she's not going to understand that. But we didn't fix it downstairs, and the lighting downstairs has been kind of a mess ever since. Literally, we just have to go, it no longer works. We have to go to the fuse box and like plug in an outlet to make it work. So that's all wound up now. I was not expecting to find a piece of foam in the middle of this. You almost never find a piece of foam in the middle of this now. So this was definitely like made years ago. So now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take a little bit of the red yarn. Ooh, maybe not that red yarn, but like some of this red yarn. I'm gonna cut it into fourths. I'm going to tie it in 4 different locations. So we're going to tie it. Oh, we're going to try to find the middle here. There we go. Going to tie it here, just like a regular like square knot or granny knot. I'm not sure I still understand the difference from them. I swear I was in scouting. Knots were not really my strong point though. I'm going to tie another one here. And I could get up, but also, ooh, look at how that moves. I love when technology works for me. All right. Then we're going to tie it here. And we're going to tie it there. So now it's safe to take this off. Come on, big boy. Okay. I'm going to undo the slip knot there. There we go. You can kind just undo this slip knot. There we go. So this is a hank. And this is the state in which we're going to wash it. I'm going to check back in a little bit after I've wound up the rest of these things, so that way you guys can see the next step. Alright, it's a couple of hours later, and after a little bit too much Super Tramp, I have wound nearly all of the yarn into hanks. The only thing I did not touch was the sleeve, but that's because I'm getting hungry and I didn't have the patience to do any more for the time being. So part of the drying rack is now like permanently bent. I did have to switch the metal bars I was working on because like when you wind yarn around something over and over and over again, it actually is enough pressure to force the metal to bend. So there's at least one that's like permanently bent upwards. I don't know if that's ever going to get fixed or not. But now it is time for the next step, which is washing it. There is the lovely washing machine. Now I could put these into lingerie bags to keep it from potentially getting tangled, but since I'm only going to be washing them with like other yarn and not with like any clothing with metal clasps or zippers or anything like that, I don't think I really need the lingerie bag, so we're just going to toss them all in. There we go. I could just get up and just bring them over, but this is a great way to test my arm. Or how heavy the yarn is. Ooh. There we go. See, just like, it turns out this was all part of the same skein. It was just a weird variegated part that was wrapped around. There we go. Some of these were actually like, two of these when I took them apart were already in hanks, which was really cool. And I'm kind of thankful for that actually, because for the one that was in a ball, when I unwound it, it ended up being just like two strings right next to each other. So I'm not sure how well that yarn's going to hold together. We're going to see though. Go. They all in. Going to toss in some detergent. We're just going to stick with the normal cycle, even though, wait, hand wash wool is probably what I should be doing. There we go. And we'll be back in like an hour or so to take it all out. All right, the wash is done. It's time to see what it's all like. Gonna hang them all up on here. Oh good, they're not dripping. Wool does smell a lot like a wet dog though. I'm gonna have them dry up here because if I were to put wool in the dryer, it's going to shrink, and that's how felt's formed. There you go. I'm going to be hanging up now. The fact that the hanks are coming apart relatively easily is very, very good news. It means it's not going to be too tangled when I finally take it all apart. Ooh. I don't think this one survived all that well. I think this one may have gotten felted. Just a tad. I wasn't all that crazy about this one anyway. go. Yeah, that's one skein right there. And that's the last one. All right. From here, they're just gonna dry. And I'll just have to roll them up in the balls once they're all dry. Most of them turned out well. These are the only ones that looked a bit weird, but we'll have to see. I'm not gonna roll them into balls tonight because I don't want to wear out my arm before I have to go to work tomorrow. It's gonna be a lot of lifting things up and putting them down. That was today's entertainment. I hope you found that entertaining. And now I have yarn that I can do things with. Have a nice day.